war next, I think.
And so, you're on war right now.
Yeah, that's what's due the end of this week, war.
Okay. So in our last session before Dr. Sorum did his, okay, we have Romans 13, and we have Eric coming in, and we're going to pick it up again in Acts 5. Remember there in 5:27 through 29, the apostles were brought before the Sanhedrin and were questioned by the high priest, and he says, quote, in verse 28, we gave you strict orders not to teach in this name, the name of Yeshua. You have filled Jerusalem with your teaching and are determined to make us guilty of this man's blood. There you go, right? Peter and the other apostles replied, we must obey God rather than man. So, while it is true that the law is something we need to worry about, you don't have to worry about the law as long as you follow it, right? Those who are worried about laws are the lawbreakers, the antinomians, right? Without law or hate laws, right? Anarchists. But then again, what do we do to obey God rather than men? Do we start pulling swords? Do we go sign up for battle and take out ISIS? Well, you don't have to. You can leave it to the army. Not that our commander-in-chief is doing a good job. He says we're not at war with ISIS, but I guess we're bombing the living business out of them. But that's not war with ISIS. We need grounds. We need troops on the ground to fight that war. Now, if you're in the U.S. Army or the Marines or whatever, you have a duty to fight, to protect your own country, and not to mention protecting your brothers and sisters in Iraq, talking about now the family of God in that sense, because you're supposed to defend your family. Well, how big is your family? It's the church of God, right? But when you have crazies like ISIS, they're literally laying babies, Christian babies on the ground and crushing them with their feet, They're rewarding, this is the latest, crushing babies' babies with their feet, and then they are selling or giving 4 or 5-year-old girls as gifts. If you sign up for jihad or if you did something crazy, here is your girl, and of course is a sex slave. It's not a future wife like you would see, a 90-year-old guy walking around with a 9-year-old, It's not like that. That would be virtuous comparison to this. Anyway, it's all nuts. But that is definitely grounds for justified war, because they are conducting something very unjust. So now, talking here in America, under one umbrella now, we're supposed to obey the laws of the land, right? If we disagree with the laws of the land, well, what can you do? You can try to overthrow the law. You don't drive 190 miles an hour in a Porsche to show what you can do. No. Remember Bill Clinton, he raised it from 55 to 65, the speed limit, right? Well, maybe our next guy can raise it to 75. Then everybody will do 95, right? It's just how it is. But you can go to court with your issues, right? You can try to overthrow abortion. You can try to persuade the legal system, in other words. Lawsuits and so on. But you're not supposed to sue other Christians. That's another thing. Isn't that crazy? Corey, you asked me to hey, Nick, can you lend me $20? Here you go. I'm not supposed to ask for it back. Put that in your back pipe and smoke it. How's that? Cool. Yeah. It's a check that's going to bounce from here to Stockholm. That's awesome. Can I have $200, please? All right. Now, when it comes to protest, we'll do it peacefully. The same Peter who sought to protect Jesus at the Garden of Gethsemane as the Lord was being arrested, of course, he aims for the soldier's head and gives him a haircut. The guy loses his ear. Lord puts it back on. If you live by the sword, die by the sword. That's different from joining an army, defending your country, right, and engaging in justified war. Now, if you're in the U.S. Army and you were asked to join ISIS, that's when you just go, you can peacefully say, no, I won't. Well, now you're breaking the law. We're going to throw you into Army jail. Well, then go to Army jail. Because the U.S. Army is not going to join ISIS. Are you with me? Different call altogether. So, if a Christian wants to protest, say against abortion, ought to do so peacefully. Moreover, when it comes to the Word of God and the freedom to proclaim the gospel, should the act of preaching the gospel become a crime, then the Christian must stand up and obey God and His laws over the laws of the land. So, I mean, think of a guy like Greg Laurie. If they just said, listen, you can't preach the gospel anymore, well, he's going straight to jail because he's not going to shut up. He might not be able to rent stadiums anymore to push his harvest crusades. Push, I don't mean in a bad way. To have his harvest crusades and push the name of Christ so people can get saved. But he's not going to stop. He'd be walking down the pier with Ray Bentley 24/7. Arrest me then, right? And if it's good enough for Paul and Peter, it's good enough for us. Because that's exactly what happened to them. Ever go to Rome, we'll go to his cell, or one of the cells, where Peter and Paul, I mean literally, from that wall.
Oh, cool.
It's a little smaller than this room. Actually, a lot smaller than this room. From here to kind of like where Corey's sitting, maybe a little bigger. And you can just touch the walls and you see right there's a hole in the ceiling where they dropped them down, and you can smell just the wetness still even to this day. And then you walk outside and there's like churches, basilicas, Roman pillars. You got the what is it? Colosseum on the other side of buildings. It's like, wow, there's a jailhouse right here. It says Paulus and Petrus,
Wow.
which is so cool. Yeah. You think if they were false prophets, right, they would have cracked in that cell together. We're not in Jerusalem anymore. We're in Rome. We're going to die soon, probably, right? Let's just come clean and forget about this, you know, if they didn't experience him alive from the dead. Talking about Peter. Paul saw him post-resurrection appearance. All right, so larger concept here. God is the supreme ruler who himself has established three offices. We talked about them: family, church, and the state. He appoints kings. He takes them down. America, yeah, got what we deserve. That's why we have so-and-so in the White House. And you know what? As much as you disagree with his ideas, as much as I despise his ideology, we're supposed to pray for him. We're supposed to pray for him. Because that dude needs more wisdom than anybody else I know of. He needs more wisdom than the guy who's on crack, begging in front of a 7-Eleven store. Because I'm not worried about that guy. This guy could sink, we'll raise our country. So pray. Maybe we'll get a Mormon next time. Mr. Romney again, right? I tell you one thing. The country would not be in this shape had Romney won. Impossible. And there wouldn't be no ICs. We'd already have grounds. He'd send them back. Put at least 5,000 troops there in Iraq. Now bring it. They wouldn't even go, you know. And Assad would be on vacation somewhere in Syria. So, Christians ought to be law-abiding citizens. It is fascinating to note that the madman Nero, again, was in charge when Paul wrote all this. That's Romans 13. And, of course, what we read in Acts. All right. You guys can go through 20 by yourself. Scott Ray, who teaches biblical studies and ethics at Talbot School of Theology, that's the seminary at Biola, he says here that the passages from Paul and Peter in 1 Peter 2:18 through 25 are often taken to refer to the Christian enduring persecution for faith in Christ, not military service under the authority of the state. Thus, if someone threatened to do violence to you on account of your faith, that should neither be resisted nor avenged. Looks like a typo there. That should neither be resisted nor avenged. That's not the point of the passage. All right? What do we call that? Turn the other cheek 24/7. What do we call that? Pacifism. That's not what we're talking about. So, Ray continues, but those passages would not apply to someone who threatened your family with random violence or someone who invaded your nation's border in warfare. One has an obligation to defend oneself and one's family against the imminent threat of harm over and above the obligation to not resist evil. Very well put. So, just war. What can we conclude? Here's 7 points. The war must be prompted by a just cause. Can't be an unjust cause. Now, of course, everybody that launches a war think they have good reasons to launch that war. Mein Kampf, Darwinism, Origin of Species and Hitler to Stalin and everything else. Take atheism, there's nothing wrong with what Hitler did. Take Darwinism, all you are freaks of nature. Mother Nature just vomited you into being. She's going to swallow you up. You're going to be food for worms. There's no meaning to life. You might as well speed it up and put a bullet in your head because there is no afterlife. If that's the case, really, why not speed it up? Well, I'll tell you one thing. So we got the Aryans. They're at the top. And the Jews at the bottom. The Gypsies are in the middle. We can't have the Jews reproduce and mess with the survival of the fittest.
Right.
It's not healthy biologically. Look at them. And then they make drawings of Jews with big noses and, greedy and everything else. Look how successful they are as businessmen. They're thieves, And guess what they do too? They drink blood. And people would believe this, like Jews are vampires. In Germany, same country that makes Beamers and Mercedes. Are you kidding me? Porsche. And Protestants were in on that. So, but if you act on atheism and Darwinian evolution, if you act on that, what is the logical outwork? Do what you want. Man is the measure of all things. Kill the lesser man so the strong can survive. Same thing, let me ask you a question. Do you think that Down syndrome adults should get married and have babies? Huh? I know that. That's beside the point. Okay? What do you think? Down syndrome adults. 2 20-year-olds suffering from Down syndrome. They want to get married, but they don't want to just stop there. They want to have babies. Lots of them. Let's just say they want to have 10 babies.
Is it a Catholic? Is it a... Do they have Down syndrome babies?
No, we don't know that.
Yeah.
If they're going to have a Down syndrome baby. That's irrelevant, though.
Yeah, it's irrelevant, but I'm just saying...
How about this? Can they take care of their babies? Or would you need to take care of their babies? Can they take care of their babies?
Oh.
See, there's a lot of questions. Would they give birth to another Down syndrome baby? I don't know. I doubt it. They could give birth. Maybe they could give birth to a perfect baby, and when he's 18, he can take care of his parents. But meanwhile, maybe grandma needs to help out. I don't know. The point is, though, from the Nazi German mindset, you can't have invalids reproduce. Kill them off. Because they're a pest. Including, of course, Jews, gypsies, and people of that. It's interesting. Only the blue, blonde eyes should live. Right? That's the strongest. What did Hitler look like? He was blonde as a kid. Then he turned brunette when he got older. I think he was upset about his look. All right. The war in question must have a just intention. Just cause, just intention. And that's hard to find sometimes. Whose intention? What are your intentions? Well, it's just to take out Iran. Or do you want to turn Iran into a parking lot, put up a flag in a football stadium, go Yankees, and take their oil?
Prevent Iran from...
What? Are you going to find out the true political intent? There's financiers, very wealthy people, who their dream is to start wars. And if I can financially back Germany, right, versus, say, France or England, if I can finance both of them, one of them's going down, but both of them are paying me back, that's a good business. So some live to thrive on that. You're not going to find out the intent, always, or for the most part. And remember that, when you're supposed to pray for the president, right? If you think you have a clue of what's going on in the White House, chances are 9 out of 10 you don't, So when something makes so much sense, how come they're not doing it? It's probably a little bigger picture, other than just going, they're a bunch of idiots. Well, they may be, but they're not that idiotic, There's a lot of people there at play. All right. Number 3, it must be engaged in last resort. We try peace first. We try negotiation. And that is, of course, what Israel's been trying to do with Hamas for a long time. Okay. Look, Christ there ultimately says, when they say peace, peace, there will be sudden destruction. Matthew 24:25. Hamas does not want peace. 3 things that Muhammad wanted from you was what? Convert, pay taxes, or die. So how could you sit down and do the salam shalom, peace negotiation with those people when they don't even recognize your rights to exist? Very difficult as a Jew. All right. The war must be initiated with a formal declaration by properly constituted authorities. Uh-oh. So what do we do here about civil war? Sometimes it feels like something's brewing here, doesn't it? You got the NRA going crazy. The government's trying to take away our guns. What's going to happen? Oh my gosh, that's exactly what they did in Nazi Germany. They took away everyone's guns. Now no one could defend themselves, right? It's like showing up at a kindergarten school and take out a whole family, just arrest them. You can't even defend them. Now what are you going to do with the 22? What are you going to do with 10 AR-15s at your house when you got 5 tanks coming down Beach Boulevard, headed to your house? You're going to run out of ammo. So I don't think they're very threatened. I really don't. If you had 20 bazookas and a tank in your garage, are you going to fight the U.S. Army? One click and they just blew up your whole house from the air before you even heard them coming. So, but that's not the mindset of the militias, right? So the Christian solution is not just sign up with the militia and try to overthrow the White House. That is not biblical at all. You let the authorities that are properly constituted, right, they make the call. Now, what do you do, though, if they show up at your house? Again, Nazi Germany. Any Jews hiding in the house? Should you just open the door and open a fire? Well, you could, but you just blew your cover. More Gestapos are coming. They're going to kill you and the Jews in the house. Is this end justifies the means? No. Does it mean justifies the ends? No. What is it? You don't owe the enemy the truth, I believe, in an unjustified war. So you hope and you pray and you deceive the enemy, just like all armies do. They dress up in army clothes that looks like a tree. They're lying. I'm a part of the tree, I'm part of the bush, but I'm not, right? Call of Duty, hello. Basketball, again, some examples that are easy to follow. You can lie in sports and faking a shot, and that trick you. A dribble, a pass it to Magic, and he pops it in, right?
Leave the lights on when you leave the house.
Yeah. Sensors, sensory lights. 3 a.m., the lights come on, right? Barking dog, there's no dog in the house. But you're supposed to be telling the truth. Thou shalt not lie. You don't have a dog, so don't have a dog alarm. Silly stuff. It must be characterized with limited objectives as opposed to total annihilation. This is where a lot of people in the army disagree. I have friends. One guy's a paratrooper, and if you go on Facebook, there's a little private group that I've started. It's called No Mas Hamas, and I upload the most terrible stuff. I mean, yeah, if you want to be depressed, just read that thing for an hour. Corey will look at it once in a while. It's like, I'm already depressed. Let's read it anyway. But yeah, you don't want to read that on your way to church. But my friend, his name's Sean, he would just say, I got a good idea. Just drop a bomb. One. Take them all out. Now, does he have a point? He would solve it, right? It would just be over. But is that the biblical thing to do? Well, you and I can't drop the bomb, but the president can. We can at least authorize it. And remember we talked about Hiroshima, right? Nagasaki. Dropping the bomb there spared a lot of lives because it ended what? The war. But did we know that? No. See, if somebody hit ISIS and Hamas so hard that their great-grandkids would feel it, if they really did, these little sleeper cells with the bored the bored Muslim in an Americanized family is sitting in his garage educating himself on, YouTube, reading all these articles. How can I give meaning to my life? He's so delusional, wants to become a radical, blah, blah, blah. Those guys, they'll just go like, dude, I'm afraid to even open my computer because they're going to track me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That was actually on the 6 o'clock news tonight that they've caught 100 Americans going into Turkey trying to get into Syria to join.
Well, that was at 6 o'clock tonight?
6 o'clock news tonight, yeah. This week they're headed over here.
Did you hear about the 12 Americans that signed up for ISIS in Syria? They want to come back now. And the FBI's like, they have to come back. They got American passports.
Right.
But we will monitor them. We will track them.
Give them a welcome. We can go to the airport and welcome.
There you go. That would be a Christian thing. Peacefully. Welcome back. So long. Right? What do you do? So you can't totally annihilate your enemy. So they say, right? Now, we didn't totally annihilate the Nazis. They were prosecuted at the Nuremberg trial, and there's still Jews chasing down the last breathing Nazi, right? They're Nazi bounty hunters, and when they find that 97-year-old guy playing the piano as a Christian in Köln because he is retired, right? Like Erich Brinkmann, my grandpa, hello, right? They find those cats and they'll drag you straight to trial for the murder of blah, blah, blah. All of these people. They're not going to give up. It must be, number 6, conducted with proportionate means. This is very important. This is why the world is condemning Israel. Because Israel shouldn't send planes to blow up Hamas in Gaza. They should stand at the fence and throw rocks back. Or send mortar shells. I have no idea where it's going to land. It goes right through Dome of the Rock or something. But see, Gaza is located on the sea, the Mediterranean Sea. So if you shoot it this way, well, it's going to go to Israel. But if Israel did that, from the center of Israel, well, it could hit Tel Aviv, it could hit Haifa, it could go anywhere. So, number 6 here, it must be conducted with proportionate means. The force must be used in proportion to its threat. See, I disagree with that. If you have radicals and all they've laid their hands on so far are mortar shells, and we know Iran is trying to get more stuff in there, yes, Egypt, Barak stepped down, right? Mubarak steps down. Then you have the Muslim Brotherhood. Now we got a new rule there, and they say they're blowing up new tunnels because IDF found all these other tunnels, etc. Listen, if you have a bunch of, if you have a bunch of terrorists shooting mortar shells and they have no idea where they're going to land, they just zoom around and they hit southern Israel somewhere, right? Are you going to sit around and wait for them to get missiles that you can send straight into one of the high-rises in Tel Aviv? Stan, stop praying. Stan, for those who watch, he's our prayer warrior, or he always falls asleep in class because I'm so boring. Pray for the Jews. Pray for peace in Jerusalem, right? So what do? Should the IDF go on the other side and go with proportionate means? We're going to send mortar shells back and throw rocks. What do? Should the IDF, when they're parading, when they're walking around the streets of Jerusalem, and all of a sudden you see a little riot, you got kids throwing bottles, you got adults throwing rocks at the IDF, and they just stand there, literally, with helmets and gear, getting hit left and right.
That's why they built the big wall.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think I could be one of those IDF guys. I would just go, excuse me, that's a second rock. But now, see, I wouldn't be a good guy for that, see? So I wouldn't sign up for that. Because somebody throws rocks at me, I'm going to open at least a water cannon and blow them to the other side. You know what I mean? And that's what they normally do. During the third Intifada, I was there. My wife was scared that I was going to go. And I had to call Wayne House, who's a reputable theologian. Wayne, here. Is he going to get killed? What's going to happen? La, 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 la. She was just going crazy. Israel's always crazy. It's been this way for forever. Well, that's not good. Don't worry. Safer there than it is in your own neighborhood. Right? So the third Intifada is about to kick in. Radical Muslims are going on the internet, and what are they saying? Look, we have to all get united and just storm the borders of Israel and just take it over right when we're there. During that day, I'm literally counting the hours. I'm on Facebook. I'm drinking coffee on a balcony at the cheapest hotel in Tel Aviv. I'm sitting on the roof there, and I'm just watching toward Jordan. Nothing happened. There was a few buses that came in. I forgot. I don't think it was from Syria, from the Jordan region, right? IDF's just waiting at the fence. They get out of the buses, start throwing rocks, approach the fence. IDF just opened up water cannons and blew them right back to the bus. The bus went back. But should have stood there and met with rocks. You know, you have to fight fire with fire, that type of fire. So that's why I kind of disagree with this. But you can't annihilate and blow up the entire city of Gaza either. There are kids there. Yeah, maybe future radicals, but more likely than not, but you still can't do it. Do you educate them? No, they have one education, Islam and the Hadiths. So how do you change that mindset? And watching Al Jazeera doesn't help either. So it must be conducted with proportionate means. The force must be used in proportion to its threat, so they say. In other words, you can't simply nuke the Gaza Strip due to them sending mortar shells into southern Israel. Yes?
What is the source of this list?
This is from Scott Ray.
Moral choice.
Yeah, Just War Theory. Yeah. I didn't want to recommend two books. We'll go with Geisler, but Scott Ray, Moral Choices is another good one. 7 conditions that he calls the Just War Theory, or what is called the Just War Theory. Finally, the war in question must respect non-combatant immunity. Those who are not fighting, you can't just go and blow up innocents, right? We should only target military individuals in the opposition and not civilians. That's also in Moral Choices, page 253 and 254. You see the source here at the top? I'll blow it up for you.
I have a question back on the subject of you don't owe the enemy the truth.
Yeah.
What is the distinction that would be here that would be different from what the Muslims say, you know, as part of our duty to lie to the enemy, or as part of, you know, I mean, that seems like more of an thing. I mean, what is it?
Okay. I don't think you can just take one thing out and isolate that. If you're going to talk about the just war theory, you got to remember here, there's a just cause. Now, if you talk to a radical Muslim, because they're encouraged to befriend you and lie to you, and then eventually get to you and blow up your pad, right? So, they think that they have a just cause. They think that they have just intentions, right? But when it gets to here, it must be engaged as last resort? No. Jihad awaits. There's 2 types of jihad. There's inward struggle, right? Flesh wars against the spirit. Same type of thing. We struggle with sin. But then there's outer jihad, which means kill the enemy, right? So what part of these 7 here would the Muslims go with? Well, they believe they have a just cause. Allah. Allah created the world. You don't follow Allah, you deserve to die. Or pay higher taxes, then probably die, because it's going to get more radicalized. The war in question must have a just intention. They think they have just intentions, right? We're going to capture the world for Allah by the sword of Allah, period. It must be engaged at last resort. War? No, it's always going. Here's the mindset. I told you Dr. Ed Heinzen from Liberty University. He was my Old Testament survey professor in seminary. That's the guy who can teach the book of Revelation in a couple hours. Killer professor. Shouldn't say killer professor when we're talking about just war theory, huh? Anyway, Dr. Heinzen, he was writing, he knows Israel very, very, very well. Better than most tour guides. I'd say better than all. And he's on a bus coming in from Petra going north. And on his way toward Qumran, he sees a few small parapet walls in an area that he's never noticed before, like it was just excavated. And he says to the Arab guide, interesting, it wasn't a Jewish guide, and it wasn't a Christian guy, it wasn't a Messianic Jewish guide, it was an Arab guide. He says, "What was that we just passed?" And the guide says, "What are you talking about?" "What? No, I just saw a dig or something, archaeological remains." "What was that?" It's nothing." "I know it's nothing. Now tell me what it is, because I saw something." "That's where the Jews lost the 6-day war." And Dr. Heinzen says, "Jews lost the 6-day war? You guys got smoked! That's what he said. Because he's been hanging out with this guy for a while. He goes, oh, no, 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 no. The war never ended. Fight that mindset. They never lose. Because it continues. That's since 1967. In the 20th century, we didn't lose. Got our teeth kicked in, never ended. They never lose. And so when they live in a culture of death that breeds violence, kill anything, and if you really do good at it, you get 70 virgins upstairs, maybe 70 times 7. I heard one guy say that now. That's really what it means. And so you're going to be really busy up there.
Like use one and throw it away like a Kleenex?
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe they have a perpetual virginity going on, who knows?
It's not a very feminist religion.
No, it's not.
So what do women get?
They get nothing.
They don't get nothing?
No. But the point I'm making is that mindset where we never lost the 1967 war because it's still going. When we die, we graduate. Yeah, and if you are a U.S. Marine and you're a Christian, yeah, when we die we graduate, but when we go to Iran or Iraq or Syria, we still kind of want to come home and hang out with our family, right? Go to church. Let's not push the envelope. I don't want to die yet. Would like to have grandkids. When you have a culture like ours who lives and breathes life versus a culture of death that never loses, who do you think is going to win in the end? In the end. Terror. Terrorizing you is what's going to happen. And once you get to the politicians, like you look in London, right? Look in France, look in Sweden, they get their way. They get their way because politically it's one of those things, if we don't give them this, school bus is going to blow up tomorrow. So you calculate what?
And they're getting bigger here, and it's going to happen here down there.
Absolutely. See, Americans, you guys, I'd say you guys, I think I'm more Americanized than most Americans, so I'll say I'm one of you. But now I'm going to distance myself because I've already seen this from Europe where I came from. And that is, you say, you guys, the Americans think it's not going to come here, it's already here. Mosques are being built all over the place. And when it gets here, it's too late then to try to stop it because it's already here. Now, one good article I read this morning in the Jerusalem Post is within Israel alone, there is the Arab population has been growing faster than the Jews reproducing and Christians reproducing. I'd be scared if I was like a politician knowing those facts. It's like, oh my gosh, really? Jews, Christians, you guys better get busy. Well, for the first time in a while, now, Christians and Jews actually have more kids in Israel this year than the Arabs. So I was I think it's interesting. But in any event, so getting to your question, the Muslims, what about them lying, deceiving you, and it's part of Islam? Well, we don't view the unsaved as enemies. In a sense, they're enemies of God, right? But you're supposed to love your enemies. Muslims are not supposed to love their enemies. They're supposed to deceive and kill their enemies. So when I'm saying deceiving Nazis as they come to my door, does Anne Frank live here? Is she upstairs under your bed? Anne who? Oh, that's what we thought. All right, later. I'm brewing the coffee. And then they leave. I think I'm justified in sparing Anne's life and deceiving the Gestapos because they are going to kill her and me. Maybe they'll let me live, but they're still going to kill her. And so, no, I don't owe the truth to an enemy because I have a just intention, I have a just cause, right? This is an unjustified war. I'm praying that God will send the British, the United States, Italians, France, somebody come in here and take these clowns out. Maybe I can keep her alive. Do you know what I mean? Basketball, different story. Taking a shot. You can deceive in sports. Same thing with camouflage, lying that you're part of the grass because you got a sniper crawling. All right, moving on. Antinomianism. We're back and forth here because I am not following the textbook as you are reading it. You read it. I'm going to touch on things that I think are important and other things that are not in your book, like Scott Ray stuff. So we talked about anti, right? Anti is without or against. Nomianism comes from the Greek word namas. Namas. Like no mas, Hamas. I'm kidding. So antinomians are sort of like the biker gangs, gangland mentality, but is also common in some acts of war, when war crimes are committed or ethics is thrown out the window. That would be antinomianism. And you can, of course, now if you ask some radical Muslims, or just ask a nice peaceful Muslim who doesn't act on those Quranic verses that says, you know, smite the enemy at his neck, which they interpret to be beheading. Did you hear about the mosque in Toronto, up the street in Canada?
No.
Mosque in Toronto,
Yeah.
educating 4- and 5-year-olds how to behead. In Canada. Just north a little bit.
And east.
Yeah, and east.
Mexico too, right? Mexico down below.
Then Juarez.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The children, they're teaching the children to do that.
Oh, they are? I didn't know that. In Juarez or just everywhere?
Yes, in Egypt.
TJ? Wow.
But there's not the narcos, I don't know.
Yeah.
Same thing.
All they got to do is recruit Juarez, and it's game over. Did you guys see that movie with J-Lo? She was doing a sort of like a documentary on Juarez of what's going on there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it's called Juarez. It's actually pretty darn good. That's a place you don't want to go to. I mean, Tijuana is SeaWorld comparison to Juarez.
Mm.
And that's where radical Muslims are going, of course. Because they're like, come on in! It's all good, right? What do you guys have? And, of course, in Venezuela, too, right? Getting little, setting their grounds.
So many narcos there, so many...
What's narco mean?
Empty. Narcos?
Narcos.
Narcos is like people that drug.
Oh, narcotics.
Narcotics, yeah.
Oh, okay.
A lot of houses that are empty because they used to belong to the narcos and they're trying to fight with them.
Who is they trying to fight them?
Well, the police,
The
the
government.
government, yeah.
Oh, the corrupt government. All right, hedonism, hedone, pleasure in Greek, right? Do you know any hedonists? Maybe you used to have one, would be one. Maybe you still are one. Christian hedonism, it's not good. Only on the weekends. It's the same thing as looking at the Epicureans, right? Do everything, we'll get to that in philosophy. Epicurus, do everything in moderation, right? You want to drink some wine, make sure it's good wine. Don't drink too much because you'll get drunk. Don't drink too little because you're not going to enjoy it. You know, sex, a little bit. Where do you draw the line? Drugs, commit adultery in moderation. Where do you draw the line? So there are still to this day people who meet, like groups of people that go out with this philosophical tie to some of these Greek philosophers, and they will drop $600 on a plate, and there's barely any food, but it's the best food, the most expensive wine. They have to have the best of everything, right? That is hedonism. Also antinomian, Epicureans. Again, here you got Epicurus. Do you see? Right here. Pleasure is the essence of good, and pain is the essence of evil. But, let's make a distinction. If I were to stab somebody, my intent is, of course, it's bad for me to stab somebody, right? But if you get stabbed by a doctor, right, all pain is not good. I mean, it's not bad. You see that? Pain is the essence of evil, pleasure is the essence of good. Now, if Epicurus was here today, I'm sure he would say, listen, Nick, of course, removing a tumor is not evil. The intent there was to save a life or, you know, remove whatever, which is entirely different. But pleasure is the essence of good. That one we have to disagree with. It's not. What is the essence of good?
God.
God. All right, problems. What is pleasure for some is not pleasurable for others. I like to skydive, at least when I wrote this I did. After my accident, I don't skydive anymore. Actually, after my accident, I jumped one more time, and my wife flipped. I just had to have a good landing. I like to skydive, but for others, this is clearly frightening and not a pleasurable experience. Moreover, what may be deemed morally good for one person is viewed as evil for another, right? Take gay marriage. How does Christians view that versus the relativists? Skepticism. Let's talk about that. So that was hedonism. Now let's move on to skepticism. Suspend judgment on everything. Now there is what's called hard skepticism. There's what we can call soft skepticism. Soft skepticism is a little more agnostic, a little more guarded. Remember, in logic, weakening your claims, making them less subject to attack is what we call guarding. Attorneys will do that. It's arguable that. Yes, but how likely is it? That's how you got to reply to that one. Or they'll say, you know what, it's possible that this is the case. Well, anything's possible, but again, it's not likely at all. Why are you pulling these cards out of the deck? So, suspend judgment on everything, including moral matters, from the ancient Sextus Empiricus. Cool name, Sextus Empiricus. All the way up to David Hume. Dave Hume. And of course, if you go to some of the Ivy League schools today, they'll say Dave Hume, Friedrich Nietzsche of Germany are the best philosophers ever. You know, if you just study Dave Hume, you will find out that Christianity is false because he refuted miracles. And of course, Friedrich Nietzsche, with his nihilism, there's nothing more beautiful since Swiss cheese. He's absolutely horrible in many respects. In any event, so skepticism is seen in the ancient Sextus Empiricus all the way up to David Hume. It is argued that there are two sides to every story. That's true. Can both sides be true at the same time, though, and in the same way? Don't use that against your wife. This is two sides to every story, both can't be right. She's always right. And when she's wrong, and she still thinks she's right, and you can prove that she's wrong with an audience the size of Dodger Stadium, you still walk up and say you're sorry, it'll go away. It's not worth fighting over it. Trust me. Just get it over with. And to make yourself feel better, just go, she's the weaker vessel, the Lord says. And now it's all over. Let's go handle it. Let's go handle it. Sorry. Karen loves that. Come on, we got to joke a little bit. Just do it. All right. So, what do you do when there's two sides to every story? Within moral disagreement, one can never be absolutely sure of what is absolutely right or wrong, the skeptic would say. You have a moral debate, moral disagreement. There's two sides to every story. So you give me objectivism, you give me relativism, well, maybe there's something in the middle. I can think of one person. I told him that there's only so many worldviews. There's essentially 7 worldviews. All right? And you can think of a 9th one or a 10th one. You're not. You're not going to think, unless you wanted to, you know, throw in the world of Scientology, which is just ridiculous. That's not even a worldview. Jesus was an alien, the Martians dropped up, you know, some bacteria, and here you are. That's great stuff, right? I'm kidding. But the point is, yes, in some certain, somebody asked me one time, I pointed out a problem. It was in a classroom, and I was asked, so what's the solution, Nick? I go, I don't know. Well, why do you bring up the problem? Straight out of a logic book. It's one thing to point out the problem, it's another thing to have the solution. Psst, game over. That doesn't mean I have to become a skeptic, right? Because I don't have the solution. So a lot of things put on the solution too. So problems here just because of mere disagreement in moral matters in this case. This does not mean that there are no moral truths. Just because you disagree on gay rights or whatever, does it follow that there are no moral truths? Disagreement doesn't mean there is no truth. So, there can be more alternatives than two positions. For example, the theistic answer, objectivism. A different example, although not a moral one, is math. Mathematics. There may exist an equation that no one can answer. But we know that there is an answer. It doesn't follow that the equation doesn't have the answer. All right, intentionalism. A thing is right if it's performed in connection with one's good intention. That's from Abelard, Peter Abelard. So an act is wrong if it's coupled with a bad intention. Would you agree? I was going to close it so you don't see it. Do you agree with that? Yes or no? Who decides what is good and bad in the first place? All right. To tithe to the church with the wrong intention is wrong. Right?
Well,
Unless you believe in tenfold.
you're tithing out of obedience, so is there even an intention behind it?
Yes, to
You're
be
obeying
obedient,
the word of God. You're
ultimately obeying the Lord, which is a good intent.
Okay.
As opposed to, here we go again, it's a drag, I think. Just check in the basket. Right? You know, if you have that attitude, listen, you'll get that check back from the Lord, one way or another. It's like, here it is, shut up, I don't want it anyway. I don't need it. He owns the universe. It's all His. But, and if you feel that way ever, just go, hopefully they spend the money proclaiming the gospel, or, you know, feed the kids, or whatever. Keep the buildings going. All right, so, problems. Some acts seem bad. Some acts that seem bad can be really good with the right intention, if the right intention is behind it. All right? If rightness and wrongness of an act is relative to you and I and your intentions, it is hard to avoid relativism. Can you think of a bad act with a good intention?
Well, I think Hitler probably is the first one that comes to mind. His intention was to, you know, make this purified race and do away with disease and do away with mental retardation.
So given Hitler's little worldview, you could say he had good intentions because he believed in doing X, Y, and Z, right?
The human race.
Yeah, he wanted to benefit or advance the human species through any means, and so why not?
I just want to rule the world.
Rule the world, yeah. Psychopath, in that sense. All right, so moving on, voluntarism. William of Ockham. Now, by the way, talking about him, have you heard of Occam's razor test?
Yeah.
Yeah? Do we agree with Occam's razor test? What is it, Carrie? Karen? All right.
It's a bet on whether God exists or not.
No, that's
It's the way. Oh,
that's Pascal.
Pascal wager.
Yeah, Pascal's wager. No, Occam's razor test, something like this. The best theory is the one that fits the facts with the fewest assumptions.
Oh, okay.
All right, so Occam taught, or William of Ockham taught that, you normally call him just William Ockham, right? Occam taught that all morality is traceable to the divine. Yet God could have decided things to be different. In this sense, morality is grounded in God's will. Let's stop right there. I think that is false. All morality is traceable to the divine. That's true. God could have decided things to be different. I don't think so.
I think some arbitrary.
Yeah. That's why back in my younger days, I used to love this idea of better possible worlds that you read about in philosophy. I was asked to write one, and I was like, I don't want to go up against God. And I had to, you know. And got an A+ on the paper, and it was just, yep, you just created a world that would have been better than this one. And the world that I wrote about, really humbly going, please don't hit me with a ton of bricks, Lord. Lightning's going to hit my house. It eliminated rape. It eliminated abortions, among other things. It was a world of less sexual evil. And as I'm looking at this paper, I'm going, I don't even want to submit this, but it was I had to do it. It was my first philosophy of religion class, and it was John Mark Reynolds was my professor. I'd just gotten his PhD from New York University. But in any event, if things could have been different, then you have to ask yourself the question, okay, so could the Ten Commandments have been reversed or modified? Maybe not reversed. Maybe that's too big of an extreme. But maybe, you know what, I'm just going to give him 8 commandments. Or, you know, I'm going to settle for 10 and not 22. No. If God is immutable and unchanging, then for all infinity, within his omniscient mind, things could not be otherwise. I'm not talking determinism in the sense that you are a Christian and you had a choice not to be a believer. I'm not talking about that at all. He already foreknew all that. Before he even says, in the beginning, God created heavens and earth, and he spoke light into existence, right? Even then, he knew that you would be in this room. He knew Danny was not going to be here tonight. Did Danny still have a choice? Yeah, I think God foreknew that Danny was not going to make it, because he has people here from Rome. So, in that sense, things could not be different. This would be the best possible world, given his wisdom. Now, what you can say is, you're talking about people freely rejecting Christ, freely accepting the Lord. Maybe, now if you want to draw a picture for somebody who says, well, I think God could have made it a world where less people go to hell, given X, Y, and Z. I think you could say something like this. Well, isn't it logically possible? I didn't say arguable. I didn't say isn't it very likely. I said isn't it possible? I said isn't it logically possible that given the mind of God that he created this world foreknowing fully well that this is the world where the least amount of people would freely reject him? Is that even a logical possibility? Did you guys understand what I just said? And the person would have to say, yeah. Well, I still think you're going to have a better job. He did before free will was exercised wrongly, right, in the garden. So, voluntarism, again, Occam. God could have decided things to be different. I don't think so. Morality is not grounded in God's will. It's grounded in his nature. Things are not right or wrong because God wills it. Yes, he wills it, but it stems from his nature first. It flows from his nature, fused with his will. But it's not will versus nature. I guess you could say, if William was here, well, I think will is part of his nature. Well, then say it differently, because this is confusing. So, if so, relativism might be the case with God, had he willed differently. This is why most theists would argue that morality is grounded in God's nature and not his will. And were this the case, then, what is wrong today might be right tomorrow. Well, that's what some would say. Why not? The theist must be consistent in affirming God's immutability, which means he doesn't change, his simplicity, and his moral nature. So these three cannot be separated or compartmentalized, while the voluntarist may argue that some moral laws are unchanging. He cannot be sure that they won't change. In other words, if they're grounded in God's will, why couldn't he change some? Right? Finally, nominalism. This view denies universals in that there are no universal forms or essences. Thus, we are left with particulars. Universals versus particulars. It is argued that universals merely exist in the mind, but not in reality. There is no such thing as humanness, but only humans. Okay. In philosophy, did Dr. Suram talk about the Plato's allegory of the cave? Did he talk about that at all? Have you heard of allegory of the cave? Yes? All right. In any event, you know when you add a ness or an ism to it, to a term, right, it becomes something else. What is the problem here? If there are no universals, such as goodness, justice, or love, to merely claim that there are only individual acts of good and love. What the heck happened to the other one? I'm missing some stuff. The person who denies universals. Can you have an absolute good without an absolute good being? Yes or no? No. Can you have absolute justice? Just add ness to it. Because if you talk about a human versus humanness, now let's say justice. Just add a ness to it. Just add ness to everything. Goodness, justness, humanness, and the like. If they are just particulars floating around in your mind, is there real justice? Is there real good? Is there real love? No. It's all changing, right? Everything is in a state of change except for change itself. The only constant is change now. So even then, you run into trouble. All right, we're going to have to leave it on that point. That should catch up with some of the reading that you began. Hopefully clarify a little bit. Well, now we will move right into philosophy.